Today's lesson is on map scale. You're going to need a ruler for today's lesson. It's best if you find a ruler that has a metric scale. We really don't want to measure in inches. This is the note packet you'll need for today's lesson. When we use a map, we know that this is a very small version of the actual state or country that we happen to be examining. Today we're going to use the country of Ireland to work on our map scale. All maps provide a scale somewhere on the map itself. For us, it will be in the upper left corner. There it is. And typically they will provide a scale in both English units, which are miles, and in metric units, like kilometers. So there's our enhanced version of the scale from the map. What I'm going to have you do is measure the length of the metric side. So we want to know how many millimeters or centimeters will be equal to the 60 kilometers on the map scale. You might want to pause the video so that you can measure for yourself, but I just want to show you the little red mark. You want to measure from 0 to 60. When I measured this distance, I chose millimeters, and I found that it was about 12 millimeters. It really kind of fell between 11 and 12. I did round it up, but keep in mind there will be a little bit of error in our measurement. It depends on the person measuring and the tool that you're using. Now we want to measure the English length of 60 miles. Again, you want to choose centimeters or millimeters. When I measured the distance from 0 to 60, we're going to that red mark. And I found the scale to be about 19 millimeters. And that one seemed more accurate. I would mark these distances on your map itself. We're going to use both of these ratios to do all of our calculations. We're going to set up a proportion, and then we're going to cross multiply. So for our first measurement, we are going to use kilometers. We're looking for the distance in kilometers between Castlebar and Galway. I've highlighted it on the map in red. When you measure, I typically measure from the center of each dot. I don't really go all the way to the ends, but if anyone goes all the way to the ends or uses the inner portions of the dot, that's where we're going to have a little bit of error. So when I set up my proportion, I'm going to use 12 millimeters is to 60 kilometers. When I measured my distance, I did get about 13 millimeters. So we want to keep the like items together, millimeters on top, kilometers on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. So that's 12x equals 60 times 13, and then we'll divide both sides by 12. And our answer is in kilometers. This makes sense. When it was 12 millimeters, it was 60 kilometers. We're only up 1 more millimeter, so we're up 5 more kilometers. So that does seem reasonable. We're going to continue to measure in kilometers. So this time we're measuring the distance between Limerick and Lifford. And again, it's highlighted in red. You might want to pause the video and measure that distance for yourself. When I measured it, I found it to be about 51 millimeters. So again, I'm keeping that in the numerator with the 12. And I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. And when I divide both sides by 12, I'm finding that distance is about 255 kilometers. For our third calculation, we're measuring between Tullamore and Shannon. So that's marked in red. Again, I tried to measure from center of the dot to the next center. My distance in millimeters, I found it to be about 22. If you're measuring it to be 21 or 23, that's fine. Again, it might be just the tool. But when I cross multiply, I'm going to find that my distance in kilometers is approximately 110. And if you find any errors in my calculations, just send me an email. In our last example in kilometers, we're measuring the distance between Cork and Monaghan. So I've highlighted it in green. That seems like quite a long distance. I found in millimeters, it's about 56. And I'm going to cross multiply. And my distance is about 280 kilometers. Now we're going to calculate the distance in miles. So we need to change our scale when we set up our proportion. So we're measuring the distance between Dublin and Killarney. Dublin is the capital and the star is pretty large. So again, I'm shooting for the center of it. So in pink, I've highlighted the new scale. We still have 60 miles, but now it's 19 millimeters. And then I measured my distance to be 52 millimeters. So we're going to cross multiply. And now we're dividing by 19. And when we do this, we're going to see that the answer doesn't come out to be a nice whole number. I did round it off to the nearest whole mile, so it's about 164 miles. Our next distance is still in miles. We're going to measure between Wicklow and Arklow. These towns are fairly close together. It was hard to put a little line in there, so I circled them. So try to go from center of the dot to the center of the dot. I found it to be about 4 millimeters, but remember we're using the scale in miles, 19 millimeters to 60 miles. When I cross multiply, again, it doesn't come out to be even, so I rounded it to approximately 17 miles. For our last example, we're calculating the distance between Waterford and New Ross. I did highlight it in red, but again, these are very, very close together. I found the distance to be, again, 4 millimeters. So since that was the measurement of my last calculation, I know that the value of x is approximately 17 miles. Tonight's homework is number 101. It will be a map of Egypt. I think the hardest part is trying to locate either the city or the area of interest. If they have a little square, that means it's a tourist site like Valley of the Kings or Karnak. So try to use the center of the square as well. Cairo is the capital. It's pretty large. Go to the middle of the star. The map scale for Egypt is in the upper left corner. You can see it highlighted here. You're going to want to measure how many millimeters or centimeters we have for 100 miles and the same with 100 kilometers. So establish that first. Write it on the front of your map before you do any calculations. If you have any trouble while you're completing this homework, please text me or email me or give me a call. Otherwise, have a great day.